Hey you guys, Leo and Trina here, or Fictions of Legends from fanfiction.net, or Sky Destiny from Twitter, and I'm here to bring you Chapter 3 of iGo to Dingo World, and without further ado, let's get started on Chapter 1, right? Starting the timer now. Okay. Road Rage did not sit well with one Miss Puckett. They had only been on the highway for about an hour, and already Sam was muttering and swearing under her breath and snarling every couple of seconds. The brunette in the passenger seat was quickly growing anxious as she held on to the dashboard to further brace herself to the vehicle. Said car, whom some people might actually pity at this point, continuously sharply swerving from lane to lane, causing its tires to screech almost every time. Sam, Carly began shakily as she lurched with the car's motions. Why do you keep doing that? The blonde's eyes were tight with anger as they shifted concentration from rearview mirror to road. She was slumped forward, leaning all her weight into her steering wheel and pedals. It was miraculous that the police hadn't stopped them, but miraculous things tended to happen when Sam was present. They weren't always good, but today it just seemed that luck was on her side. Jerk keeps trying to cut in front of me, she growled. Carly's face would normally have transfigured into a pure look of shock, but she was still far too afraid to fully give up on fear. So her expression only acquired a few attributes of surprise. Then just let him pass! Sam's eyes met Carly's only for a second, filled with outrage. They again darted back to the road. No! Why not? Because! Yelled Sam. He got onto the highway after I did. It's not my fault he got on too late. Now he's gonna suffer because of it. This prompted Spencer to yell, for some reason, that is, considering he was right in ear's length of Sam. Do you do this stuff because you're bored? Carly took to looking out her window, her hands now gripping the pane for further support. Those cars just passed you, you're not stopping them. Sam scoffed, still eyeing the road intensely. They weren't looking at me funny. Cars can't look at you funny! Well, actually, began the sculptor with a laugh, Sako's Uncle Otto has this one car that— Just let him pass! Carly interrupted. Spencer sat back, crossing his arms over his chest and pouting. Fine, we'll just listen to your arguing instead. No! Why? Because Mama plays to win. This would have normally been the perfect spot for Freddy to step in, as he normally did, with some snide comment to counter Sam's. In fact, there were a lot of instances during the previous conversation where Freddy would have normally done so. But no, currently the tech producer's frightened, seemingly lifeless eyes rested only on his palms as he breathed shaky breaths. Hey, addressed Spencer to the younger boy, it's not your hands that have the chip in them, it's your head, he laughed. Freddy's gaze slowly turned to Spencer's. His eyes, still frozen in shock, but ringed slightly in sadness. How can you laugh at this? He asked, voice cracking. Hey, no, called the artist. It's cool. You're like a robot or something. You're like the Terminator. The teen looked no more happy than he did before this was stated. I'll be back, Spencer said, putting on a serious face to quote the classic character from the classic movie just before laughing again. Freddy's face was still stuck in horror. Spencer just nudged him lightly. All we gotta do now is just get you a leather jacket. Man, the girls will love that. I can't think about girls right now. Psh! The older Shay sibling scoffed. When can't you think about girls? There was a slight pause before Freddy let his head bounce from side to side and then nodded. Alright, good point. The blonde girl scoffed, her eyes set into a glare. For some reason, any sign that Freddy was indeed a boy, such as mentioning thinking about nameless girls, seemed to set her off. She wasn't sure of the cause of this reaction, but merely accepted it and rolled with it. The brunette that sat next to her, however, was perhaps even the slightest bit wiser on this point. Please, she muttered sarcastically. Carly smiled as the car seemed to right itself into the proper lane as Sam's aggression fled to a different target, one that was seated in the back of the car. Perhaps in a way, it was helpful having Freddy along in moments such as these. Well, because you asked so nicely, Sam, began Freddie harshly, eyes narrowed as he stared at the back of Sam's head, which rested in front of him. What? Sam's eyes rolled habitually as she fought off the urge to turn around and cast a glare to the teenager in the back seat. Though there was no doubting that she was reckless and a speed demon, there was also no doubting that Sam was actually a moderately good driver. She knew what to do and what not to do behind the wheel. Of course, just because she was aware of these things did not mean that you would never see Sam Puckett drive by whilst eating a cheeseburger with both of her hands. That was why the blonde was only moderate. She knew all the rules, but simply chose not to follow them at certain times. Don't get your electronic signals in a bunch, Robo-Boy. Freddie's glare tightened, but he kept quiet. Though he too knew Sam was a good driver, he was also smart enough to know that one didn't twice tempt her to hit them while she rested behind the wheel of a car. It was far better to just let things run their course this time. She gestured with a nod of her head, as if he were standing in front of her. You think a leather jacket's going to make up for the rest of you? Carly, who had been relaxing peacefully with her eyes closed and a smile painted across her features, quickly snapped up alert. This conversation was going into bad territory. It was stomping its way onto thin ice, and the brunette quietly prayed that Freddie wouldn't respond to the taunt. What do you mean? Asked Freddie darkly. The younger Shea sibling quickly spun around to face the back seat and threw a desperate glance at her brother, a glance that pleaded, "Make them stop before it gets worse." But Spencer was too occupied practicing a trick that he had learned from one of Sako's cousins, Madge, the magician, in which one appeared to disconnect his or her own thumb. He beamed at his success with the trick and repeated it over and over again, blissfully ignorant of the war that was about to break out. Carly slumped hopelessly back in her seat as she let out an agonized and exasperated sigh. Her eyes drifted to the roof of the car as her hands made their way to grip tightly onto the seat in provision of anything that was expected to happen. I should mute that volume. Okay. You need me to draw you a picture, Fred nerd? Sam asked crudely. Are you really that dense? I would ask you to draw me a picture, yelled Freddie, who lurched forward almost every time he emphasized a word. If you could draw. I drew that picture of you getting attacked by a tiger pretty darn well, Benson, shouted Sam in return, even glancing to the back of the car this time. Carly's eyes flashed with fear. This was escalating quickly, and as it did, circumstances started to become more and more worrisome. When the brunette cast a brief look to the speedometer, she became aware that they were traveling just over 92 miles per hour, but the little needle on the dashboard was still steadily climbing. That picture was mediocre at best. The passive brown-haired girl gave an exaggerated, questioning look at her as her hands flailed in the air in confusion. What had this argument become about art? What did that have to do with anything? Were they just fighting for the sake of fighting? Carly often found Sam and Freddie's antics and arguing to be entertaining and even cute at times, but really, this was just ridiculous. Then another thought dawned on her. Why hadn't she seen this coming? Why hadn't she predicted that there would be complications like this? Really? Sam asked rhetorically. But before she had the chance to continue, Freddie called back, "Yeah! Really?" She questioned louder, through bared teeth as she glanced back, letting loose of the wheel for a moment, the car swerving before she regained control. A vehicle behind the group squealed in protest just before it zoomed around Sam's car, its horn honking angrily. I bet you wouldn't say that if you saw the new picture I'm planning on drawing. Oh yeah? asked the technical producer challengingly. Yeah, I'm gonna draw it on your face with my fist, Sam called, the car swerving again, purposely this time. I'll call it punching a dork! They'd just reached 98 miles per hour, according to the speedometer. You know what, Sam? Quiet! Carly yelled, finally hitting her breaking point. We are not going to get into a car accident because of a stupid argument about God knows what! Sam frowned, the car slowing. Carly, we're not... Shush! Now it was Freddie's turn to try, but Carly... Shh! I did it! Exclaimed Spencer happily, displaying his disconnected thumb. I said shush! At that, Carly turned to look at the car's inhabitants, casting every one of them a venomous glare. Now, Sam, Keep your eyes on the road. Freddy, stop fighting or you will be tied to the roof of the car. She's the one who started it, Freddy shouted, gesturing to Sam. The speedometer began to climb again. She's always the one who starts it. Freddy, if you keep it up, I will tie you up there myself, roared the brunette. Silence. The speedometer again began its descent. Oh, that's the end of part 1. See you guys for part 2.